You're kind of an expert here when it comes to designing for AI.
I'm also an author of a book on designing human-centric AI experiences. Imagine like if you did not have Google, like our lives would be much slower. You wouldn't want like an AI judge for criminal sentencing. I've seen like designers sitting in a corner coming up with something and then realizing that hey, this doesn't work. AI systems are not foolproof. It is extremely easy to fool an AI system.
I kind of really like some of the predictions that you have.
Hey everyone, welcome to Product Stories, the podcast that delves into the minds of product and design folks to talk about their stories, challenges, and work. My name is Kaushik, and in each episode, I talk to my guests about how they work, the process they follow, new tools, and the breakthroughs they have had in their career.
This week, our guest is Akshay. He's a senior product designer at Observe.ai. He's also the author of the book Designing Human-Centric AI Experiences. We talk about the framework that he uses to design for AI. We also take a deep dive into understanding more about AI, as well as the future of design with AI. We also try to understand what are some of the misconceptions associated with AI, and at the same time, what are some of the exciting predictions for the future of AI. It was an informative episode and I had fun talking to Akshay, so I hope you enjoy this episode as well. Hey Akshay, it's amazing to have you here on the podcast. I first met you in when there was this whole event happening in Bangalore, with which was organized by Sundial, and I came across you and then your work, and I also learned about that you were writing a book at that time, which has released now. It's amazing to have you. There's a lot of questions that I have for you, and a lot of things that I want to learn from you, especially about how you're designing for AI. uh yeah, it just like welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. I would love to know more about your journey, what you have done, all those things.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaushik, for inviting me, and I'm really glad to be here.
Great. So why don't we kind of like start a bit by talking about you, what you do at the moment, and
Mhm.
uh, what is kind of like your background, where you come from, what do you do for fun? Yeah.
All right. Professionally, I work as a senior product designer at an AI startup in Bangalore. And for the past 6 years, I've worked in various large and small AI companies, and sort of like working in this field for a bit. I'm also an author of a book on designing human-centric AI experiences, which you just spoke about. And I live in Bangalore. I have two cats. I live with my wife, and uh, for fun, I'd say like I've recently started to like cooking, so learning that slowly.
Great. Um, I don't think I mentioned this, but I have a cat too. She's very young, probably
Oh,
I'll show her probably at the end of the episode.
oh, that's so sweet. Nice. What's her name?
Her name is Ollie.
Oli. Nice.
Yeah.
So my cats are Momo and Shifu.
Oh, that's so cute.
Nice.
That's a very cute name.
Awesome.
Cool. Um, like okay, let's get to the whole reason why I wanted you on the podcast, which is
Mhm.
you're kind of an expert here about when it comes to designing for AI, and AI is quite the hot topic at the moment. Be it Twitter or anywhere,
Yeah, yeah.
everyone's raving about ChatGPT and how AI tools are gonna help increase productivity in business, and all those things, right?
Mhm.
So as someone who has designed for AI and who understands this field extremely well, what would you say some of the prerequisite knowledge that one needs to have if they have to design for AI?
Got it. So in terms of like technical skills, there is nothing too much. Like it's similar to how you might design any product. Like you would go through the design process and you might discover things and do research. It sort of works exactly the same. A few things that help when designing for AI is understanding how machine learning in general works, like what goes behind the scenes. You don't have to be like an expert at like you. The expectation is not that you understand how to write AI algorithms, but it's really helpful if you are sort of understand how the whole system works under the hood, because then you can design. You know the constraints of the system, you know what it can do, and you can design accordingly. Another thing that really helps is this is more of a behavioral thing that it really helps to be super collaborative because when you're in an AI company or like if you're working on an AI products, right, like it's never going to be that you will be the sole person who's making decisions about design. Uh, a lot of there are sometimes things that you will realize when you're talking to your machine learning counterparts that hey, these are things that we can do that are exciting, which and there might be a lot of gap in your own knowledge, and at the same time you can contribute a lot in terms of like what users might want and what is the right kind of experience to build. And a lot of it is, I would say, like curiosity and behavioral. Like if you're a good team player, you will do really well because essentially when you're working in an AI team, right, it's more important to listen to each other because a lot of these problems are extremely new for like humanity in general. So like there is no such thing as an expert yet. Like people know algorithms or people know user experience, but there's no such thing as an true expert in AI, right? Like some people are experts at like certain types of algorithms. You'll soon realize, like if you go deeper into this field, you realize that yeah, there are some experts that specifically work only on like something like GANs, which is like generative adversarial networks, right? So which is what ChatGPT and Midjourney are essentially. And there are certain experts that work on like supervised learning, etc. You start finding these niches, right? And you will mostly never have full knowledge. It really helps to be curious and really be extremely collaborative and introduce your team members to what designers do and uh, basically put your foot out there and sort of explain what design is to them also, because unlike what we think, they are also curious about these things. uh, Mostly in most cases, like I've seen like designers sitting in a corner coming up with something and then realizing that hey, this doesn't work. It is much better to be more collaborative, especially with AI, because a lot of it is probabilistic. Like you know don't know things that will work or not work. Essentially, I think these two things help, like generally understanding how it works, like you don't have to be experts, and the second one is basically being a good team player.
Interesting. Um, yeah, I like how you talked about being a team player, as especially since uh, as you mentioned, right, you don't know what you get, and when you're working with AI, it's lot of these things are hard to predict, is
Yeah.
is what I'm assuming. Um, so you've kind of written more about these things in your book, right? And one of those things is kind of like things around how to design for like trust in AI, and in general like about the framework that you need while you're designing for AI, right?
Hmm.
So I would love it if you can talk a little bit more about that as well.
Oh yeah. So there are multiple frameworks. So like one framework that I like to use is this idea of trust and feedback. So essentially, since you're building a product for a user, right? Like your users are only going to use your product if they trust it enough. Like if, for example, let's take the example of YouTube, right? Like if on your YouTube homepage, if you start getting recommendations that are not relevant to you at all, you're slowly going to lose trust in the system, and eventually you will move out, right? However, the counterpoint to this is that AI systems can never be perfect, and there will be some times when they'll make mistakes. So, like when you look at a YouTube homepage, you don't necessarily click on all the thumbnails, right? You click on certain ones, and you. But in general, for most people, if you used YouTube for a while, it works, right? It's sort of calibrating. So, Essentially, the AI system there is calibrating trust with you. So, uh, so it's not about like being perfect or right all the time. You don't have to have like perfect results, but you have to constantly calibrate trust with users. So, like sometimes you might give them a recommendation that they like. Sometimes recommendation might not work for them. But what happens when things don't work, right? That's the use case that you need to solve for. And the only way to like build back trust is to first acknowledge that you made a mistake, and the second one is get taking feedback from users. So I call this like the trust and feedback model. Essentially, your focus as a designer should be more on trying to build trust, and whenever your trust is broken, which it will eventually be, you build it. You sort of like get it back through like either explaining how the system works, or also by like sort of collecting feedback. And like feedback can be collected in multiple ways. So let's take another example, like Netflix, for example. So on Netflix, when you look at certain titles, right, you get this percentage match, right? That is basically the
Yeah.
system explaining you how much it thinks this matches your interests, right? And if you like it, you're giving it feedback that, hey, this works for me. And then I think now Netflix has that like double like also, I think, right? So it says that the system works for me. Then the other way is that you might say that I don't like it and you dislike it, right? You're sort of telling the system that, hey, you recommended this, your match is 98%, but I don't like this. So it'll like sort of recalibrate its model. So it's like building this relationship with you over time through this like showing how much it knows about you, and also by allowing you to like calibrate its results. So like from a user experience standpoint, like building this relationship is uh, what is important when building AI products. Another is like let me go deeper into like the feedback part of it. So one is what I said, like the like dislike is this is like explicit feedback, right? Like you are sort of the user is explicitly clicking on some button to do it. However, there are other ways to collect feedback also. The second one is like what in data science is known as implicit feedback, which is essentially you sort of infer feedback from how users are behaving. So, for example, on for example a music app like Spotify, like one is like I can like and dislike songs. I can put it in my library, which is explicit. The other is how much did I play a song? What kinds of songs do I play? Till what point in the song do I play it and then I skip it? uh, what type of rhythm or like whatever the terminology is, like those things people prefer or not prefer, and how can I calibrate this model according to this thing. So slowly what happens is that you start building like this relationship with this product, and it becomes super sticky. When people call it sticky, it's like essentially you like invested so much of your like time and energy, and you know it understands you well. It's like hard to move from over like if you're a YouTube user, it is hard to like move away from YouTube at this point, which because it has like calibrated itself to you, and it sort of it feels like it sort of knows you well enough. And generally, this happens because it's built this extremely trusting relationship with you. It is like you trust its recommendations more or less. If you don't, so another way to build implicit feedback would be like if I don't like anything on the homepage and I start searching for something. Right? That's also feedback, right? I can say that, hey, nothing on the homepage worked. What I recommended, the system recommended didn't work, and the user, now the user is going in and like sort of selecting something else. So let me like tune recommendations. So this must be happening, right? You suddenly search for something random on YouTube, and now all your recommendations have become sort of related to that previous search, right? That's also like feedback that was collected, but it was not explicitly collected. It was implied from your behavior on system.
Interesting. So one question which I kind of have is like, so the framework which you spoke about is like feedback and trust one. Um, but you also mentioned in the starting that there are like, few other frameworks that are different frameworks, right?
Mhm.
Um, so what are these other frameworks if you could probably like that?
Correct. So, different frameworks. for different parts of the design process. An overarching framework is this trust and feedback, which works more or less for all systems. If you think about any AI system, it will sort of fit into that. Another is what I call as an input-output relationship. This is from this book called AIQ. It was written by I think, two professors who were trying to explain. They were conducting a course on basics of AI, and the course became so popular that they decided to turn it into a book. And from that book, there is this another framework of input-output relationships. And what that means is that uh, any AI system is essentially translation. Right? ChatGPT is translation. My prompt to your to its response. Right? Mid Journey is translation. My prompt to an image. Any Google search is translation. My result and the output is my search query and then the output, which is the result. And you're sort of like building these input-output relationships really well. Uh, and it can be different things like again your input need not be like specific prompts or something. It can also be like scrolling, search, um, clicking. Those things can also be prompts, right? Or looking at items. Even those can be prompts. Or like it can be that on Amazon I am on a specific I'm, uh, I'm looking for a specific book, and because the input is the books page, the secondary output is similar books that are related to this. It's again like an input output sort of a relationship. That's also a good framework to look at. Like it sort of like will simplify a lot of ways you think about AI. So that is one, and another is so I'll talk about two more. One is uh, what I call as a cognitive division of labor. This again comes from this book called Prediction Machines by Ajay Agarwal. So it talks about uh, the business impact of AI essentially. Right? So when you introduce AI into a system, you're essentially doing a cognitive division of labor. Like your cognitive tasks, you're dividing between humans and machines. There are certain things that machines are really good at, like parsing through lots of data, generating predictions, or detecting anomalies. Like if there's like 1,000 data sets and you want to see a specific thing in the data set, needle in a haystack type problem. Right? It's like generally like AI systems will be much better at this. At credit card fraud detection, etc. Uh, and then there are certain things that humans are especially good at, like making any kind of moral, ethical decisions. Like you wouldn't want like an AI judge for criminal sentencing. Like it's like you will always have that doubt in your mind, and you'll always question, even if the AI system is much better than the judge. Uh, Humans have this inherent trust in other humans over a system for such type of decisions. Another would be like humans are, I believe, are generally better at judgment, like making a judgment call. For example, like you're a designer and like this AI system uh, outputs like 300 different types of uh, uh, sort of experiences for, let's say, a login screen, right? You're not going to develop 300 screens, right? So the human value there is making the judgment of what screen to choose, right? So even on mid journey, when you go in, like it gives you multiple examples of that same thing, and the human value there is making that judgment of which one you want to pick. So judgment is something humans are generally good at. Uh, so far, humans are also much better at sort of uh, any task that require a lot of dexterity. Like if I have to like uh, make do pottery, like a specific type of pottery I want to do. I want to garden my plants, or I want to like sort of like pull wires under the hood of a car. Like it's still much difficult for machines unless you build systems in place. But if it's like a thing that the machine has never been trained on, like you can assume it will make some mistakes. So like or like simple things like fetching you coffee. Like it's super difficult for a machine to do it right now. Like you need like getting things from the kitchen is a very hard task to do from a robotic standpoint. You have to go into the kitchen, you have to understand perception, motion planning, etc. Then you need to know the layout of the kitchen. Then you need to understand generally where do humans place. Like for example, like I come to your house and I want to make chai, right? Uh, I'm doing a lot of things. I know I am navigating. I know I have a general sense of what a kitchen looks like. I can go into the kitchen. I can pick up. I know what chai patti looks like. I know what sugar looks like, etc. Different ginger looks like, etc. I know what knives are. I have to pick it up. Now, no AI system can really do it. Like there's a famous like after like Turing test is a famous test for AI. There is also an IKEA test for AI, which is like if a robot can assemble an IKEA furniture by its own, that will be the next level of uh, advancement in AI in some sense. So a lot of things that humans do are like inherently might feel like trivial, but they're like not really.
Interesting. So one of the things which you spoke about and kind of caught my attention was the role of ethics that that is there, right? And like
Mhm.
how uh, we tend to prefer humans to make such decisions. Um, so what kind of role does ethic play when you're designing for AI?
Correct.
Or when you're building for AI, right? So that's
Mhm.
something I'm curious about, and I would love to understand more.
Got it. So again, like if you like look at fundamental role of ethics, it is about building trust with your users. Right? Like an ethical product is more trustworthy, and a trustworthy product is more useful. Like if a product is trustworthy, then only then will people go into buy it and use it. If they don't trust it, they're not going to use it. It's like the fundamental premise. So, so like AI ethics is a very large topic, and like I'm not the expert on this fully, but I can answer it in terms of product building, right? Essentially, there are three considerations when you think of like AI ethics. One is like you want to build AI that is trustworthy, you want to build AI that is safe for humans, and you want to build AI that is beneficial for humans, right? The first part is what does it mean like when an AI is trustworthy? It is means that you know the limits of the system as a user, you know what it can do and what it can't do. Like you know that you cannot ask your YouTube app to set an alarm. Yeah, that's a limit that the system has established. Right? It is also transparent more or less about how it works. Like it need not be like when I say transparency, it does not mean that you give me a log of data because that's not consumable, that's not explainable. But you have a general sense of how the system works. Like it's not a truly black box model, right? Uh, and the other is when it comes to trustworthiness, there's also like a role that like bias plays into it. So like uh, you might have heard of things like AI systems are biased, and like uh, you had that there is a famous image of uh, some DSLR camera that is recognizing a Chinese person um, as they are blinking, like it says that are you blinking when they're not really blinking, and that's happened because like the camera was sort of trained on biased data set of Caucasian people for whom like blinking means for them blink the act of blinking looks a certain way, and like if you apply that same thing on same lens on another person of a different ethnicity, it will give you like incorrect results. uh, in this case, like I don't think the motive of the people building these systems is inherently bad. Like they're not trying to be biased. It is just that like the data sets that we have, because of history and because of like lots of things happen in the past, and because there is more documentation about a certain group of people, which is where these data sets tend to be biased. and it's also like easier to collect these data sets, which is why you're going to so it is easier to train on these data sets, and you'll have this inherent bias. uh, Being super mindful of this bias is important, and that is how we might build trust with your users again. uh, Another is so first part is like the trustworthiness. The second is like the safety aspect, right? You want your AI systems to be safe for humans to use, and this gets a lot into the realms of law and like policy making, which I'm not an expert on, but in general, you want your AI systems to be safe for humans to use. You don't want it to cause any harm. That is something that you might consider when you're building your products. Like, a quite good question to ask is this safe for somebody to use? And if it's generally a consumer product, most of them are like safe, sort of like. But if you're building like a car or something, you really want it to be safe. Like, you don't want it to be in accidents, and which is why like in the car industry, like AI safety will be a very big topic, because for them like everything for them depends on safety of their vehicle. And that's why you have these NCAP ratings, etc. This is essentially like a marker of safety, and for a lot of these car companies, their valuations, revenue, everything depends on like their cars being safe. Right? That's the bottom line. So
Mm.
now you apply that to self-driving cars. You want safety to be the main factor. Like you wouldn't trust a car from a new company with your children in it to drive itself.
Interesting. Um, yeah, I mean that actually, like, summed it up quite well for me. Uh, some like, something more I want to kind of like understand from you is, like, right now how AI is a hot topic, and like,
Hmm.
people are talking about ChatGPT and like Dali, Midjourney, uh, whichever tool that is, right?
Hmm.
So what are kind of like your thoughts on like the AI trends that are happening at the moment? What are like probably like, predictions? What are your thoughts in general?
Okay. So no like major prediction is in general it's net positive in my mind. Like there are definitely downsides to these systems being there, but in general like ChatGPT and Midjourney and anything I'm sure like there will be a lot more AI models that we are not aware of. Like ChatGPT is the most famous one, uh, and I feel like in general, if I look at it from like a broader lens, right, uh, we are sort of imbuing intelligence into machines, right? A core human, uh, everything that we do is a product of our intelligence, right? I'm talking to you because you and I are fairly intelligent, and we have the ability to communicate with each other. You are intelligent enough to run uh, this podcast. You know how these systems work. If you think about it, everything that we do is a product of intelligence. Now, if you apply to this, any advancements that we make in imbuing intelligence in objects around us or like in our environments is going to be net positive, because humans evolved over other species because of their intelligence. Like we are on the top of the pyramid because of intelligence. So if you uh, and again like this can take like a doomsday scenario, Skyrim type direction as well. But in general, I feel it is so far it's net positive. Uh, if you talk specifically about ChatGPT and Midjourney, right? Like the way I sort of look at this is any AI system does one of these three things, right? It sort of improves the speed of doing something. It I or makes you more money. In a capitalist economy, it makes you more money, or like in another economy, it might generate more value or power, whatever that is. But in general, like, it makes you more money, right? You can have lots of bots doing things for you, trading for you, etc., and you make more money essentially. That's the goal. Uh, First one was speed, which is basically you're able to do things much faster. If it can summarize things faster for you, uh, it can help you find the right things faster. Like imagine like if you did not have Google, like our lives would be much slower, because we would be like just scouring the internet to look for things. We might not discover a lot of things. So it generally makes things faster. And the third one is that what I call is that it gives you sort of superpowers. It allows you to do things that you were never able to do. Like I cannot make a painting, but Midjourney allows me to make one. I cannot write, as in like I am not an expert at writing poetry, but ChatGPT or like some other system allows me to sort of write poetry. So the third thing is sort of it enables you to do things that were never possible. Like uh, and again, like apply this to like an industrial scenario also. A robot in a factory sort of allows a single person to control an entire factory. Right? Earlier, you needed thousands of people to make a car, and potentially now you can do it in like maybe like 20, 30 people and few robots. That's essentially and you can make more complex things uh, applied to 3D printing, right? Like if you like looked at 3D printing of like parts for specific spacecrafts, those are super complex, extremely hard for a human to build consistently well. But something like technology sort of enables you to like build those things that are never possible humanly. So in general, there are three things that these do, and I think it is a net positive for the world. I'm sure there are everything will come with its own negatives, but in general, it is net positive in my mind.
Interesting. So we have kind of been like talking about how to design for AI and understanding more about AI and what it does,
Hmm.
right? Um, so something which I'm very curious to understand, and I'm sure like a lot of designers are curious to understand, it is uh, like what kind of role will AI play in design in the future of design, and how will the role of probably like a designer change, or like how the way we work might change, right? So that's
Hmm.
something um, a lot of people are curious to understand, and I'm personally very curious to understand as well.
Interesting. So here I might be making some predictions. So if I'm wrong, uh, I'm sorry about that in advance. Uh, in general, if you think about it, like what's happening right now with AI is super important to pay attention to, and it is inevitable. Like it is going to happen. None of us has control over it. There's too much. There are a lot of market forces around it, and it is a train on its path. Like you cannot stop it. Right? Uh, so I believe that AI will play a role in the future of everything. Like not just design, like anything that you do. Think of it as what does an intelligent version of that look like? Right? Everything has a if you can imbue anything with intelligence, and if it is possible, people will go ahead and do it. Like it started sometime back with like these smart homes and these things, but now you think about it, it's very common to have like a bulb that is smart, and eventually you might think of putting AI into a bulb, and a lot of things can happen. In terms of AI for the design industry, like I believe it will start with like low hanging fruits, right? Like uh, making copy, making UI, uh, trying out different versions of something, creating images. That's the low hanging fruit. And a lot of work has happened and will happen in that. And it's a large industry to target anyway. Like marketing is I'm guessing like maybe 300, $400 billion industry or more than that, I'm guessing. And people are going to attempt that. That will happen. Another is, and I believe like a lot of this is happening with like because ChatGPT became so popular, Midjourney became so popular, it became like you could imagine the possibilities of like doing this, right? Like it gave you superpowers to like sort of create weird images. Like people are writing books with this, people are creating comics with this. Like a lot of creativity is unlocked because of things like that, which was not possible for someone who doesn't have that much of a skill to make a comic book. Now it is possible. Like, I can potentially make a comic book if I want to with Midjourney and ChatGPT. It's like it'll be super easy, right? And it'll sell or not, that's a different problem, which is a truly human problem if you think about it, right? Creating things and selling them are two different aspects of uh, what people do, or generally what businesses do, right? So in terms of design, there'll be a lot of low hanging fruits: creating images, UI. You can extend it to 3D modeling, etc. Anything that you create, you will be able to. Now your job as a designer might become more about judgment. Like now this AI is able to create 1,000 options for you. How do you make a choice? How do you make an informed choice? How do you choose between three options? Why do you think you're choosing it? How do you convince another human about why you have made that choice? Right. So your job is no. So because making UI and at least in the context of product design, digital product design, like making UI right now is very trivial. Like it's to pick up some library and then you can quickly get into building something fairly decent enough that looks at least decent, right? So those things are slightly easier, but the harder thing is going to be choosing things. Like how do you convince a group, right? Or how do you uh, put it out and how do you test it and validate something? That is going to be much more high value because as of now, AI cannot really do it. It can give you something pretty looking, but do you know it if it works or not? Like unless you test it out, that is something that a human will have to do at some point. I feel like there'll be a lot of opportunity in the research part of things which are like purely human, like very hard to do for AI. Anything that is surface level, at the skin level of things, that's going to be super easy. Uh, Another way I think about it, so I've had like people come to me and worried about like their jobs, and I completely understand like your it's sort of like threatening your livelihood in some ways, right? And I don't really have a good answer, but the another framework that I keep coming back to more or less is thinking of what your job is in general. Like, if you think about what you do, right? Let's pick you. Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Like, what does your job include? You go to office,
Um,
then, or
yeah.
you work from home. Or what happens?
Yeah, I work from office.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's mostly to do with like collaborating with say like a product manager or someone from business and trying to understand really what the problem statement is that we're trying to solve.
Mhm.
And probably like I work on like a bunch of designs like based on what the problem statement is, then like kind of get back to them, like get some feedback, work on iterations, then again like work with like engineers to understand if this is possible, uh, like how much time it might take. And usually this spans over a week, but
Mhm.
like this is kind of like a timeline of feature. And once you release, like you try to understand from users whether it's working or not, and yeah, all these things.
Correct. So, in your even your own journey, like creating the design is a very small part of
Yeah,
what your job is. Like that's one of the skills that you have,
yeah,
but a lot of it is like you choose. Like I'm sure when you make something, you make lots of options for it. You try it in your head. You're thinking of what works, what doesn't work. You have a an acute sense of judgment about what works, right? A lot of your job, like a lot of the value in our work as designers is like in choosing things and making a
correct.
choice. Another
Yeah,
is a lot of it is collaboration, human to human collaboration, like having relationships or like having uh, interacting with different kinds of people, understanding their needs, translating that into something. Right? The actual act of creating the UI is like a very small part of it, but getting requirements, converting that into like what is a flow, what might a flow look like, or then collaborating with your engineers, understanding technical constraints. There are lots of things that you do in your job which we feel are not important, but those are the more important things. Like creating the UI is a very small sliver in that. Like because We're always going to go back and forth. Right now, imagine like some AI comes in and you're using that AI to create things, right? And you are, instead of you trying 10 things earlier, now you're able to try 1,000 things. Your iteration cycles are like much faster. And now you can say that, hey, I tried these things, and instead of earlier saying I tried 10 things and these are the things that work, now you can say like I tried 10,000 things, right? Out of these, I think 100 sort of work. Out of these 100, I felt like four things that I like: something about iteration 99, I like something about iteration 60, 30, and 20. I want something to combine these things and spit out one more iteration. And then it spits out like 100 more out of things that you have sort of calibrated it for. Right? Now you have like 100 more iterations here that sort of match your original one. And now you're going to make a choice between that. And like as you do this process, you might arrive at a few. And then you might also input engineering constraints into your iteration at some point. You'll be like, hey, we have this specific database that we use, or like something. I'm not sure. But we have this specific technology stack that we use, or some database, or like there is this type of user who uh, responds really well to this type. If you're building a consumer app, like a lot of these behavioral things become important. So what if you had like mood board and engineering constraints, and you combine them, and now you have like 10,000 choices to make. A lot of your job is now like choosing, and your iteration cycles are much faster. You can have better debates. You're not spending too much time on creating the UI, because now the this like that your speed of output has like increased that dramatically, right? Like now you can just think of it and it is there. Earlier you used to think of it, try to find some library, UI library, if you don't have it already, uh, match it and mix and match, try out different things. Now instead of like, a lot of your iterations now happen at the speed of thought. Essentially, like the gap between uh, execution and this thing is so. I imagine at some point, like again, bold prediction, like a lot of these UI building apps that are focusing truly on just building. For example, if you're only focused on building mobile UI, might become obsolete because you don't need Figma anymore. You can just like think of it, and it's you have four iterations, and now you're just selecting things, and you're like moving to some ideal version of. And everyone will have a different iteration, even if you think about it. Like despite going through this process, what you might come up, what I might come up, what someone else might come up might be slightly different. Like you have like it still has like the essence of you, right? I might choose a type of font, you might choose a different type of font, but it might solve the same type of problems in different ways. And there'll still be a subjective nature to things. Your job is still there. Your iteration cycles have increased dramatically. And I believe like it, uh, uh, my general philosophy is that like what you do is very temporary, right? Like I am a product designer, but I'm sure you are a product designer. I'm sure you can do a lot of what product management does already, right? Similarly, product management feels the same way about your job. And like eventually, like it's very fuzzy if you think about it. Like we have created these roles and we have boxed ourselves into specific skill set. But in general, most people do lots of things apart from their core skill set. So I think it's not too much of a threat yet. But I hear the other side also, like because you were being paid to do something, and like uh, you now the suddenly company that is the company decides to downsize you because there are robots that are doing your job. It is a sad and unfortunate reality. But again, like it's a train that is moving. It's very hard to stop it. Uh, Some it's a nihilistic way is like, is there even any point in stopping it?
Interesting. Um, I kind of really like some of the predictions that you have, and like um, it's very interesting. Like what role it might play. Not again, not just in design, but everything in general, right? Um, and yeah, it's very interesting, and at the same
Yeah.
time, I'm kind of like curious to like understand more. This was actually like one of my questions was just like um, should you treat AI like a threat, or should you treat it as a tool that you can use? Which you kind of answered. But like another question which I kind of have is, and I want to understand more from you is like, what are like some of these common misconceptions that people have about AI?
Hmm.
Um, and and I'm sure like you kind of like mentioned one or two here and there, but like I want you to probably like explain what are like some of the misconceptions, and why you think like these are misconceptions, and uh,
Hmm.
yeah.
So, I'll come back to your point of like it definitely is a threat. Like I don't want to say it is not a threat. Like for certain jobs and certain types of work, if you're doing uh, if it is a low value white collar job, there is like real threat of it managing. Like if your job is only to sort of do calculations in an Excel sheet, then it is like it is a threat for you. Right? So I don't want to like discount saying that it is not a threat. It is threat for certain types of jobs, but it might be better off for us as like the design community to think beyond the skill set of using a tool or a software as our job. Like it's a lot more. Like that's a small sliver in what you do. A lot of it is judgment. So some of the what was the question again? Like some of the uh,
Misconceptions.
misconceptions, right? So first is like first one is because of um, AI getting so much popularity in recent times. Like people start feeling that AI can do everything. Like even still, AI systems are super limited, right? What we see is what I call them as like POCs. Like ChatGPT is a POC, Midjourney is a POC for a larger application, but it is still a POC. It is not perfect, and uh, assuming that AI can do everything and will eventually do everything might be a slippery slope, and it's like it might be dangerous to think in terms of that because then there's no value for us as humans if AI can do everything, right? I do believe like there are certain things that AI can do, like I mentioned, like speed, money, and superpowers. There are certain things that it can do for you, but it cannot do everything. Like let me give you like a famous one is autonomous driving, right? In self-driving vehicles, uh, there are multiple levels to autonomy, right? And different companies or different research groups will treat it in different ways. So there's like level 1 to level 5. So I'm sure different cars have like level 2 ADAS, level 3 ADAS. That is essentially they're saying it's a level 3 autonomous driving system, essentially. Um, in industry, no, in industry nomenclature, level 5 is full autonomy. As in, you don't need a steering wheel, you don't need anything. You sit in a car, it takes you where you want. Right? We are still too far away from it, and the reason for that is that while AI can do, uh, while AI and like certain sensors can basically detect uh, generic places and generic roads and generic types of environments, right? There is a long tail of use cases which we don't know, right? So, um, so for some time back, like having uh, like some billboards in the background, right, confuse this autonomous system into thinking there are people there. It might just stop in its tracks, right? If you look at Indian roads, right, or like any road in Bangalore, for example, any gully that you have, like there is so much uh, dynamism in that environment that it is going to be super difficult. Like all of these systems have been trained for like uh, 101s, like San Francisco and these kind of cities where like it's the roads are straight and like, but most of the world is not that. Most of the world is messy. Most of the world is narrow lanes. Even if you go to Europe, lots of streets are extremely narrow. They were never built for cars, right? So uh, while we might be able to do get to like level 3, level 4, level 5 is where it becomes super difficult because there is a long tail of events that can happen that we don't even know about, right? And every day something new gets discovered. You have to train that model for it. So I think we might get to like 4.5, 4.9, right? But true 5 is going to be super difficult. Like even like human drivers are not perfect, right? Like you cannot expect a human driver to be extremely perfect in all road conditions. There, even if a driver has driven for like 30 years of his life, there is a still a small chance that they will fail. So it is not like AI cannot do everything. It is not perfect and it is not foolproof. It is I think it is like uh, unreasonable to think because these long tail cases will come up. Uh, yeah, our environments are constantly changing. Right, there's like if you even look at Bangalore right now, like there's like metro construction happening. Right, this is not predicted by somebody. There is a road diversion. There are different kinds of people on the road. You might have a different type of car. How does a self-driving car interact with another self-driving car? It's a lot of questions that are hard to answer and hard to do. So I feel like we might. So it is going to be very difficult for us to have a car that has no steering wheels. Like even now, even if we talk about level 4, it will still have steering wheels because eventually you won't want humans to make that last minute judgment. It is that trolley problem thing. So if you have, you are aware of the trolley problem, right?
Um, I mean, I am, but it would be great if you can like
Yeah.
talk a
So
bit about it.
the trolley problem is an experiment in uh, philosophy where uh, uh, there is an unstoppable train that is moving on a track, and in front of it there are a group of old people, right? And if the train driver decides to divert this, it is going to kill a baby, for example. And the third, we could add one more layer, which is like if you try to stop it, the train will blast, for example. Right? Right? Because so different societies answer this trolley problem in a very different way. Right? Generally, like young societies will young societies that are very respectful of their elders might choose to save the elder because babies can be reproduced again. They don't have enough life experience. Uh, Developed societies might choose to like run the train over the elders, and so different societies respond to this problem very differently. How do you expect an AI to respond in this thing? Like if an AI is faced with something like this, it is going to be difficult for it to choose. So this is where like the problems of like level 5 autonomous driving come up. They like sort of stop at philosophy because there are like deeper philosophical questions that are hard for humans to make a judgment on. And judgment is generally we know that humans are better at judgment than AI. So it is even harder for an AI to do it right now. So that is one. Second is AI systems are not foolproof. It is extremely easy to fool an AI system. Right? I'll give you an example. Uh, uh, it's called I forgot what it's called. Like, but like people have hacked AI systems a lot with minute things, right? If you have an image recognition system, right? And you sort of have an image of an ostrich. Sorry, if you have an image of a temple, for example, right? Uh, if you give this image to this image recognition system, right, it'll detect temple, right? However, researchers have tried to just remove or like change one pixel in that image, and it now detects it as an ostrich. It's the same image. For a human eye, it is still in the image of a temple, but now I can just change one specific dot or something which is imperceptible for humans, and now it is detecting as an ostrich. There is one researcher that created glasses that fools facial recognition systems into thinking it is a celebrity. So you just have to wear those glasses. You can fool that system to think you're Shah Rukh Khan or something. So like, you can do the same thing, like same level of hacking for voice. Can it can do biometric recognition. That's why like safety security is a very big thing in AI. It's like if you are knowledgeable, it is fairly easy to fool these systems. So they're not,
Okay.
I wouldn't say they are like perfect when you think about it. And the third one, which is like my pet peeve, is that when non-technical people come to me and say that, hey, how do I contribute to this thing, to AI? Feels very technical, right? But a lot of AI's use cases are purely human, which is where uh, user experience people, uh, ethicists, anyone working in the humanities as well, like they have a lot to contribute because you're grappling with very hard questions. You're also understanding behavior of people. You're essentially wanting to, uh, in a purely capitalistic society, you want somebody to use your product and pay you money for it, right? A lot of this transaction is dependent on people, like how well you understand people, right? So you 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 trust. You're sort of reluctantly okay paying 3 lakhs for a MacBook because even though you know it is expensive, you are still trusting, right? Uh, and I'm sure like the MacBook has a lot of AI features, a lot of things that it does well with AI, but eventually like the part of selling this is purely human, right? There are lots of aspects in AI, or even like when you're building an AI product, right? Like you're building a recommendation system, like training this system in the beginning is a very human activity. You are sort of giving it feedback multiple times, you're annotating things, you're categorizing things. It is mostly done by people, more or less. Even with ChatGPT, right? Like, I'm sure they have lots of annotators somewhere in the world, which is why the system became so strong. And then, like, it's sort of like you have lots of computing, lots of this thing. Like, it's very human to actually build these systems. It's not purely technical. Like, making a choice between things, like, uh, same trolley problem, right? Like, between these two things, if you are in this specific society, what do you choose, right? How do you determine the value of an individual? Let's take a less morbid example. You're looking for a job. What kind of signifiers does um, how do you do this matchmaking between a person and a job, right? It's a purely human. It is, while AI can like predict which job might be good for you or not, uh, eventually you have to interview that person, or you have to go into it and figure out whether it fits with you truly or not. A lot of this is what non-tech people can contribute, and non-tech people can contribute a lot in terms of having conversations with your AI teams, like being in that team, questioning them, uh, talking about ethics, talking about what works, coming up with ideas. A lot of these are like truly human in my mind, and I think like that's why like That's a misconception that if you're a designer, you can't contribute. I I can assure you, I can really assure you that as a designer, you can truly contribute. While given that you are curious, you are a good team player, and you sort of have like an inclination to learn about this. Like it's also what you know, learning what your engineers are doing, right? Like, it's not just one way. Like it's not like you creating something and then saying that, hey, go build this. It's more about like, hey, can we build this? Let's figure out a way to build it. Do that little bit back and forth, and that's it. So there's a lot of contributions that can be made, and it's not purely technical.
Awesome. Um, yeah, I mean, like, firstly, like, the way you kind of like break down each thing and try to explain, I think that's very commendable.
Oh, thank
And
you.
especially you try to break it down in a way where someone, even if like don't understand the technicalities behind it, you kind of explain it in a way where like any layman can understand. I think that's amazing, because um, for me, when I thought, when I woke up in the morning and I started thinking about the episode, I kind of came with this empty slate, or like empty page, that you can say.
Mhm.
For me, this was like a class about AI, right? Like for me, this was about like learning about AI. So I think that was something I really wanted to like kind of like tell in the middle of the episode. Now that we are kind of reaching the end of the episode, I wanted to like really mention that. And
Thank you.
also the fact that how well you understand it, and like um, and how you kind of put it forth, right? um, I think that's just amazing. Like
Yeah,
I
thanks,
really
Kaushik.
love this conversation, because there's just so many things about AI um, that I didn't know, that I don't know. Uh, and I think I have quite a few things to research about once I'm done talking to you. But I mean, thank you so much for doing this. Like
Yeah, of course.
it was really informative for me, and I'm sure it's going to be informative for anyone who listens to it. We have actually reached like the end of the episode, and
Mhm.
the way I usually like end my episodes is like ask a bunch of rapid fire questions, and I like to close the episode. So
Mhm.
if we are good, we
Yeah,
can
sure.
actually get started.
Yes.
Awesome. So the first question that I kind of want to ask you is like, since you're a writer, and um I'm sure like you read a lot too, uh, what is that one book that you recommend everyone should read?
What is it's very difficult. There's different books at different points of time, but um, one book. So I have different books for different scenarios. Like if I'm facing trouble with for example, something at work, I might have a different book for it. How to navigate that, and it's sort of like you're sort of bookmarking in your mind, and you know that hey, that book has the answer. I might want to refer to that. In general, one book that I keep coming back to a lot is this book called The Great Mental Models. It's a three-part series. It's by Shane Parrish of the Knowledge Project. He runs this podcast called Knowledge Project, and he's written a series of books about it. Sort of summarizes different mental models that you can use. And I keep rereading that book a lot. Like whenever, maybe like once in a quarter or once in 6 months. Like I will for sure like reread that book. So this keeps me. Uh, yeah, that would be one thing. The Great Mental Model is a good book.
Okay, great. So usually this is my last question, which I ask people, and I kind of like ask almost all the guests who come to my podcast this question:
Mhm.
that if you kind of had to worry about nothing, which is like money, career, nothing at all, right? What would you be doing right now?
Oh, I would be doing the same thing. Like, I'd be still. So, I think like the way we think about like career and think is uh, at least like a few years back, I used to think in terms of like, hey, I'm a designer. I want to like do this, do design and grow in that level, which is okay. Which is also nice life. But in general, like have slowly started thinking of myself as like sort of an empty slate, and like you can potentially do anything if you want to. So, but right now I'm like doing design because I like doing it, and I like working in this industry. It's like very fulfilling for me. I like uh, working, and like limiting yourself in like this specific career professional role is not very useful, at least like in this 21st century, because like things keep changing too fast. You don't know. I did not know about AI when I was in college. uh, I did not know about writing some time back. I learned how to write and I wrote a lot, and then I figured out. So like I now I can call myself as an author. 2 3 years back I could not have called myself, and the only difference is that I happened to write a book, and because I was curious about this topic. I happen to enjoy researching about it, learning it. It's not like a lot of it is not inherent, right? It's not like I was born with this thing. You're mostly a blank slate. You can change yourself anytime. So I would still be doing what I'm doing. If I had like real like didn't have to work at all, right? I might. No, I'd still do this only. So,
Great. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this. Like, this was a super informative episode for me, and I genuinely enjoyed it because I learned so much while talking to you for the last 1 hour. Um, yeah, thank you so much for making some time out
yeah, of
on
course.
a holiday and being here and like sharing all your knowledge. I'm truly grateful that you made it.
Oh yeah, and thanks for inviting me. This was fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Product Stories for more such episodes.